Previous lesson, we start to consider functions. Let me briefly review what we are talking about. We discussed that if the program is very large, we can divide this program into several parts called subprograms or subroutines. And after that, we can use these subprograms in the main one. And to declare the function, we need to write the following code. We need to write type of the result that this function will return. Name of the function. Name of the function is any identifier that you want. And list of the parameters. List of the parameters is optional, and list of the parameters depends on the function. And after that, between open and close brace, you should write some computational statements. Maybe not only the computational statements, you can write here any statements that you want, including input-output statements. But these statements called body of the function, and somewhere inside this body of the function, you should write the following line: return and expression. This statement returns the result, and the body of the function, the type of the function should be the same as the type of this expression. And the parameters are variables that we should write separated with comma. For example, this function has two parameters, x and z. The type of these parameters is double, and this function returns double, some value of the type double. The function, for example, nothing, doesn't have parameters, and this function also doesn't return any value. It returns special data type void. Void, it's a special data type that corresponds to no result. This function doesn't return any result. And the last example, the function with name apple has one parameter of the type int and returns one parameter of the type int2. We consider one example. Let's consider it again, because previous lesson you will have questions. You have questions. The function max has two parameters, two integer numbers I and j, and this function returns one integer number, the largest number between I and j. how we can write this function? I declare temporary variable result. If I greater than j, result equals to I. Otherwise, result equals to j, and return result. Let us assign the initial value result equals to 0. And I can call this function a lot of time from the main function. Here in this computational, in this statement, I call this function 3 times. Also, I can change parameters here. For example, like this. These two parameters, these two identifiers, just tells that this function should get 2 integer numbers. These numbers may be I and j. These numbers may be constants 5 and 1. I can pass here one number and one constant. I can pass here the number with a different name. For example, I here and 7 here. I can change parameters of the function and so on. Well, if I run this program, I see the result. Do you have questions about it? Is it clear?
Yes, sir. It's basically a shortcut, right? Just like it's like copy pasting.
Two numbers. We consider it later. Yes. This case, of course, it's more difficult than the case when you should return one number. We consider it maybe. Today we discuss about how to return array, set of numbers. What? Return 0. We consider it now, right now. And here in this presentation, it's written that, please pay attention, that the statement return provides immediate completion of the function. So return and stops the function and returns the result from this line. What happens if I write return 0? For example, here, what happens?
It cancels the operation?
No. The same? No.
The program stops?
You'll get 0. It will say 0 is the largest.
Yes. The meaning of the function max is to select the largest number between I and j. But suppose I'm not a specialist and I write here return 0. It means that this function will return 0. The function is just in some, we can consider it as a black box. Black box has 2 inputs and 1 output. I input 2 numbers here, and this black box tells me what number is the largest. And if I write here return result, and I input here 5 and 1, this function, this black box, returns me 5. But if I write here return 0, this black box always will tell me the largest number is 0. The value that this function returns it doesn't depend on the input. It always returns 0. Let's check it. Let's check. Here, and here, the answer will be 0, and we will see on the screen 0. Max is 0. The result that returns from main, you didn't process it. You didn't process the result that returns from main. And this return 0, you can delete it. You can remove it, and the program will work completely the same. Return, of course, return 0 in the main function. Has some meaning, but from our point of view, it doesn't matter. Do you write return 0 or not in the main function? In the end, well, now I show you one more example. Suppose that I write here return result. In this case, this function will return correct result, but suppose that I write here return 0. Again, the statement return interrupts, it stops the function. It means that this part of the function never will be executed. We will return this 0, or even I can write here not return 0, but return result. But the value of the result is 0. So it's completely the same. And these lines never will be executed. And we will see 0 on the screen. If I assign here some other value, we will see the result, some other result, 12. Why 12? Because here max will return 1. Max, the function where max returns 1. 1 plus 10 plus 1. We will see 12. Well, the main point is that you can write several return statements, but you can usually programmers write return statements inside if, for example, or it's the best way to write only one return at the end of the function, to be sure that these return statements just finish this function.
What if we write result return I and J? Will return to them?
No. If you write return I, so what do you mean and J? How to write and J? Like this? I and J? Comma? There is no such operation as comma. Well, this situation, I don't want to go into details here, because this situation is analogous that minus on minus gives plus. Mistake sometimes gives correct result. And here is some special features. Well, you should return only one number. If you write here, for example, return I, what happens? The function will return the first parameter. Well, do you have any other questions about the functions?
If you don't return anything, will it still run?
No. Very good question. Suppose that I delete this return, but I write here int, and if I try to compile this program, compiler outputs me the mistake that this function must return something. You must write here at least one return statement because this function must have the result. Well, but sometimes functions can be without result. Void. In this case, you write void. Void, for example, nothing. And this is a good example of the function. This function doesn't have any parameters and doesn't return any parameters. For example, I can just output some message here. Nothing to return. Well, now this function, it returns nothing, it just prints the message to the screen. And I can call this function here, for example, after this. How to call it? Just write the name of the function and semicolon. When I call the function nothing, I'll see on the screen this message. Oops, one miss. I should uncomment. Of course, uncomment return I. And we will see the answer and the message nothing to return. Yes, you can write here void main and delete return 0. Also, this program will be correct, but compiler outputs you just not a mistake, but a warning. It's better to write int, not void. But this program still be correct. Please, other questions about the functions?
No, sir.
But we make return for int. So he will return this value on int, integer, or decimal. We have something like function summation or like this, but in summation decimal. Return for integer. So we give us.
What do you mean decimal and integer? Decimal means double, real numbers. Okay. And yeah, so let's consider this example. What happens if the return parameter doesn't correspond to the variable that you try to return? For example, here int nothing and return, and you try to return the real number. For example, I can write 1.1. It's a good example. It's just a real number. What happens? Let's try to compile. And you see that this program compiles correctly. Because, why? Because their real number and integer number, it's quite similar. And compiler outputs you warning that you can lose the fractional part of the result. If you try to return 1.1, but you specify the result as int, you lose decimal point, after decimal point, the fractional part of the number, and the function nothing returns only 1. Let's try. Let's check it. Function nothing now outputs the result. That's why I can use it in the output statement. And we will see on the screen that the result is 1. If you change here the data type to double, of course, you will see 1.1, because now the result and the result that you actually returns and the type of the result is the same.
This is the same between with the negative and positive number.
Negative,
Like
well,
inside
unsigned int, more or less the same situation. Compiler just outputs you warning and returns the number. Well, the other situation when compiler outputs you a mistake like this. What is the meaning of this type? Pointer. Pointer. But here I try to return a number. Number and a pointer are completely different data types, and compiler outputs you a mistake, not a warning. Compiler outputs a mistake that the type of the result doesn't correspond to the type of the function. Yes, if you need to return pointer, just you should return pointer. We consider examples with pointers later. And here, no any mistakes, because 1 is a real number, 1.0, and it will returns as a real number. Okay, if you understand all of these things, I ask you to write very simple function, very simple program. Do you remember the formula of the area of a circle? Pi. No, area. Pi r squared. Yes, the formula for the area of circle is pi r squared. To find the area, we need to know the radius. I ask you to write the function that will compute the area of a circle. What is the parameter? R, radius, input parameters. What is the return result? This value. How to use pi in the program? I already told you, you should write use math defines, math before include, and after that you can use in your program at any place the constant. I will write in. This constant m underline pi. This constant will correspond to pi. Please write the function and call this function from the main to compute the area of a circle with some given radius. How? Yes, to use this constant, to use m pi, you should write these lines. Define, use math defines, and include math point h. What will be the type of the parameter? Double. And what will be the type of the result? Also double, because pi is a double number. And again, I ask you just to compute the area of a circle inside this function. Input-output operation should be written in main. This function should contain only computational statements. Space, you see, define after that space and capital, these math defines, not small numbers. Yes, but not in, please. You shouldn't write here CE because the value of R should become here as these parameters. You will write CE in the main, and after that you call the function with a corresponding parameter. Yeah.
How we use by, I mean, how to write by.
What?
By, how to use.
First,
Yes.
these two lines, and after that, and pi.
Can I see the include again? The define.
Yeah. Use mark defines. Compare your result with this one. This is the correct solution. Again, no. Inside the function, you should compute the result. You should apply this formula and returns the rear. The rear should be double. No. R in square. No operation like square. How to compute square? R times R, radius times radius, times radius times radius. Don't forget semicolon. What is C here? You should declare.
Should I declare here? I declare this.
But no. C here is a local variable. Remove this operation and place it here. It's not a parameter of the function. It's a local variable inside the function. Well, now it's correct. Now it's correct, and you can call delete here C here. Okay, and output the result. Because you input radius, you should output the result. Oh, you use online compiler. Make okay. Because online compilers has some features that differs from Visual Studio.
Why doesn't
Where you call the function? Here. What is the result of this function? This function, but this result, this result will returns here. You should assign to some variable. Please look to how I work and how I write the program with maximum. I call the function max. And after that I assign the result that returns the function max to some local variable. No, it's more or less correct. 5 and the real branch. Space between return and 1. Why you try max? Why you you just introduce the code from here? If you don't understand, if you have questions, please interrupt me during my lecture and ask me the question, because I see that you don't understand how to write this function. You already, the function should be not radius, but rear of the function, and this function will return the result. Okay, I show you the correct solution. I show you the correct. Please look to this correct solution. I think that your solutions are more or less the same. The function, you can give any name that you want, but this name should be more or less correspond to the problem. In this case, the function has name rear. This function has 2 parameters. One parameter, input parameter, radius, and second parameter is the result parameter, return parameter, rear. And their general form of the function, corresponds to this simple function. I declare a local variable that corresponds to the result. After that, I compute this result and return it. This function completely corresponds to the function max. I declare the result, I compute the result, and I return the result. The function rear, parameter r, radius, and the result will be the rear. How to call this function? Just write rear and radius in brackets. For example, if you write rear 1, what will be the rear of the circle with radius 1 pi, right? Let's check it. Yes, the rear of this circle equals to pi. These values are the same. If I put here, for example, 1.5, I'll get another result. If I put here 2 in square, we see the result 4 times pi.
Can you read it from the console? Can you make people like say you want the user to input the radius?
Radius, of course. I want to show you this. Well, let me delete these examples with maximums. Let's declare the double variable radius. Scene. I don't write the output statement something. Please enter the radius, scene radius, and after that radius, and after that I call the function area with parameter radius.
Okay.
I will see on the screen the result. Also, I can use this function several times. Radius and S. After that, I can write something like this. S equals to area and output S. Here S corresponds to the area of the circle with this radius. For example, suppose that we have a function that computes the area of a circle using radius, but suppose that I don't know radius, but I know diameter.
You just do divide by 2. Simple.
Right. It's very simple. What should I write here as a parameter? Not radius, but diameter divided by 2. Well, this is a good example of a function that gets as a parameter not a variable, but the expression, simple expression, that just a variable over 2, diameter over 2, but its expression. I can write here very, very long, very complex expression. It means that in the declaration of a function, this double R means not a variable, but a double value. And this value can be computed as a result of some expression that I write in the main function. In some case, this expression can be just a name of the variable, but in more complex cases, just a variable over 2, a variable plus 1, and so on. Now I input the diameter. Suppose the diameter is 10, the radius is 5, and here is the area of a circle with radius 5. Okay. Do you have any other questions? This is very simple examples, but these examples shows you some features. Well, maybe there are a lot of features of the function that is listed here in the presentation. For example, about the we consider it maybe next lesson next. Next lesson. And now I want to yes. I want to discuss about, if you don't have any questions about the simple examples of the functions, let's consider more complex example. A function that gets as a parameter an array. On these simple examples, we consider the functions that gets as a parameters 1, maybe 2 variables. but this was just the variables. And the question is how to pass the array. When we discuss about the arrays, we consider very important feature that name of the array is a pointer to the first element of the array. And a pointer can be considered as a name of the array. So when we have a pointer, this pointer can be considered as array. And when we have an array, we can take the name of the array and consider this name as a pointer to the first element. That's why the question how to pass an array to the function is very simple. The answer is written here. We should pass a pointer to the first element. A pointer to the first element to the function. But when we pass a pointer inside a function, the function doesn't know the size of the array. That's why the size of the array should be parsed as the second parameter. So this is the general form of the function that gets as a parameter an array. First, we should pass the pointer of the array type. And the second parameter should be the array size, just integer number. All other things, all other elements are the same. Name of the function is just the name of the function. Res type is the type of the result. And between open and close brace, you should write some statements that implements the algorithm.
So like a for loop?
Yes, like loops, like if, any statement that you want. So this is an example of it's just a short example without code. I write code right now in Visual Studio. For example, the function mean that gets as a parameter a pointer to integer, and this pointer is considered as a pointer to the first element of the array, and array size. In the main function, I can create an array, for example, A of the size 6, and call the function mean, and pass to this function name of the array and the size of the array. In this case, this size equals to 6. Okay. Let me show you this example in Visual Studio. Maybe not this, but more simple example. Split these lines so that from previous example. Let's declare an array. And let it be of the size example 10. I don't want to input the elements of the array from the keyboard. I want to initialize this array. Just the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up to 0. 10 numbers. Well, the question is how to compute the sum of the elements of this array. Of course, you already solved this problem, and let's quickly write this code in the main function. How to find the sum of the elements of the array? What we should do first?
You write a for loop that goes through the whole.
No, before loop. When I want to find the sum, what I should do first?
Oh, declare you have to declare.
Yes, declare the variable and assign 0. Let's declare the variable int s and assign 0. And only after that, write a for loop. For I int I equals to 0, I smaller than size, I plus plus. And here s plus equals to a I. And cout sum equals to
Your mic is muted, sir. Your microphone is muted.
You're muted.
oh,
Okay, now we can hear you now.
yes. Sorry, maybe I press the button, some button. Well, the sum is 45. Sum is 45. Well, now, how to do the same but using function? First, I should write the corresponding function. Int. Int is a type of the function, type of the result. Then name of the function, let it be sum. Then, according to my presentation,
Pointer.
First we should write a pointer. Int star and identifier, for example, array. And int size of the array, let it be n. I can use any identifiers that I want. And after that, inside this function, I should repeat this code. I can just copy it from this. From this part. What I should correct here, now the identifier for the size is n, and the name of the array is r. And what I should write here?
Return some. Return.
Return s. Yes. Return s. S. So now this function gets an array, a pointer, a size, and return the sum. How to use this function? For example, this, I can declare a new variable. After that, I can assign this variable to a function, and I should pass to this function the correct parameters, the array A and size. And after that, I can print the sum. 45. In this example, I pass to this function name of the array, that is a pointer, and the size. Okay, what happens if I call this function like this? A1. What I see on the screen as a result?
1.
1, right? Because I pass the correct pointer, but the size is only 1. If I call it A2, the size will be 2, only 2 elements. The result will be 3. A3, the result will be 6. And so on. But again, pay your attention that compiler doesn't check the size. The actual size of this array is 10. But I can call this function with the size 20. And compiler tells me, okay, you can call it. No mistakes, no errors. But if when I try to call this function, I'll see some random number, unpredictable result. Because we try to compute the sum of the elements that are don't assigned with their elements without initial values. Well, this is a very hard mistake. It means that it's very hard to find this mistake because compiler doesn't output any warnings, any errors. Programmer must keep it in mind always.
So what if you want to, I mean, I guess it's the same as the max and min if you want to input from the console?
Yes, you can input their actual size from the keyboard.
No,
for example, actual size like this, actual size, and cin actual size, and call this function with the second parameter like actual size. Actual size is 5, and you compute their first sum of the first 5 numbers.
If we have many elements, but we didn't know the size.
In this situation, nobody can help us. Programmer must know their size, must know the size of the array. If you get only a pointer, you can't understand what is the size. That's why you must pass to the function pointer and size.
And likewise, you can input elements individually from the console, right?
Yes. You can input the elements inside the function. You can in main and in function too, and so on. Well, any questions about the functions with arrays?
No, sir.
What? Sorry?
What if you want to create a certain range in the array, like from index 2 to index 7?
Index 2 plus index 7?
No, like from index 2, which is from 3 to 7.
3 to 7. What? Just some of the range. Yeah. Okay. Okay. What should we do? We should pass here two parameters. The initial index and the final index, or initial index and size. For example, let's do it. First and last. First index and last index. Okay. What should I correct here now? I should start for loop with
from first,
from first,
less than last,
and smaller or equals to last, because last will be now not the size but the last index, from first up to the last. And here I should specify the range, for example, from 3 to 7. And we see the sum of the range. So the parameters of the function depends on the problem. If the problem is to find the sum of all of the elements, it's just one parameter. If the problem is to find the sum between first and last inside some range, you should pass two parameters. Please, there are more questions? Let me come back to the previous example with one parameter. I delete. Okay. And just some remark. The notation here is very important. If you write here parameter in capital, it's not the same that in uppercase and lowercase are different. N uppercase and N lowercase is considered as different identifiers. The first remark, and second remark, that the order of parameters is also important. Here, the first parameter is a pointer, and the second parameter is a number. If I try to put here first number and second parameter is a pointer, compiler outputs me a mistake that the order of parameters doesn't correspond, the parameters doesn't correspond to their function. The first parameter should be pointer, but I write here the first parameter as integer. Mistake. Okay, and also the number of parameters is important. This function must have two parameters. If I try to call it just with one parameter, it also will be a mistake. If you try to compile it, you will see the message that this function doesn't take one parameter, because in the declaration, I write that this function should get 2 parameters. Of course, when the program is not very large, it's just several lines of code, these mistakes, you can just see it and correct it. But suppose that your program becomes very large and consists of hundreds and thousands lines of code. These programs, these mistakes is hard to find.
We have 2 variables. Like first variable x equal to, and if we make a new variable y, but if we declare this variable y in the address of x, it will be the same value.
Address of x?
Of x.
Well, what do you mean? Okay, int x equals 2 and int y. Please write, because I don't understand what do you mean.
If we declare y in the address of x, like this, like 1 equal x, and we have x here.
Okay, but
The same one.
it's a mistake. It's a mistake. Int y.
Or one.
What is the y? Well, if y is a pointer, it will be
in the same address.
Well, I think your question is not correct, because if you try to type these lines in Visual Studio outputs a mistake. It's wrong line. Do you have any other questions about the functions? No questions. Well, I think it's enough for today. And next week we continue. We again consider some features of functions.
We go online.
Let's discuss about it. For me, of course, it's more preferable to have offline, because offline I can see you, I can see your programs. What do you write? Because some mistakes in your program I cannot check online. It's hard to check the mistakes online, because here I just come and look your program, and say a few words and to correct the mistakes. But when we have online meeting, it's hard to do it. But in the case when the most part of the students are not here, and only a few of
just us and maybe one another was students. Just
I will go to my country on Sunday.
I see. Okay, I think I discussed about it with Mr. Sergei Srachan, and we will have maybe the next lesson online. And I will send you a mail about the next lesson. In any case, you have the links to Microsoft Teams for practice, for lecture, and you can connect to these links and connect to our lesson. In this situation, I think it's better to have online lesson. Well, more questions?
No, sir.
No questions. Oh, one question.
That's what's like this.
Okay, it's not an address. It's not an address. It means here why it's a reference. It's not address.
So
But in this case, y is just a reference to x. It can be considered as just another name for the variable x. Y and x means the same variables. References are used in passing the parameters to functions, and maybe we discuss about reference next lesson, because we will discuss again about features of passing parameters to the function and from the function. And next lesson I will answer your question how to return two numbers. We will discuss about next week. Okay, if you don't have any questions, let's stop recording and